What if I told you that the world's first multinational corporation didn't just shape business, it ruled entire nations, toppled kings, and triggered famines? This wasn't a shadowy cabal. It was real, legal, chartered by a queen, and it ran India like a business empire for more than a century. Welcome to Sands of History, where the past isn't dead. It's not even past. If you love deep dives into hidden truths and the dark corners of empires, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to help us keep this channel alive, check out the financial support links in the description below. The birth of a company state. It began with spices. On December 31st, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a royal charter to the Governor and Company of Merchants of London trading into the East Indies. This wasn't just a legal trading license, it was a ticket to conquest. The charter gave the company the exclusive right to trade in the East for 15 years. What started as a group of merchants in London would eventually morph into a full-fledged colonial power. The British East India Company evolved from spice traders to sovereign rulers, controlling vast swathes of the Indian subcontinent with terrifying efficiency. And it did so with an army, a navy, and the cold, calculated logic of profit. Foot in the door, the Mughal Empire and early trade. When the East India Company arrived in India in the early 1600s, they entered a world dominated by the mighty Mughal Empire. Wealthy, sophisticated, and largely self-sufficient. The British were minor players compared to the Portuguese and the Dutch. To survive, they had to play humble, requesting permission to set up trading posts, known as factories, in Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. The Mughals allowed it under strict conditions. But trade was only the surface. Beneath the silk and spices lay a growing ambition. The company realized something crucial. Wealth didn't just flow through goods, it flowed through power. And where there was instability, there was opportunity. The turning point Battle of Plassey. In 1757, everything changed. At the Battle of Plassey, the company, led by Robert Clive, defeated the Nawab of Bengal with a mix of military force, bribes, and betrayal. They installed a puppet ruler and gained control of Bengal, the richest province in India. This was a turning point. For the first time, a corporation, not a nation-state, was ruling territory and collecting taxes. Clive returned to Britain with unimaginable wealth. The company's stocks soared, but the cost in India was devastating. Within a decade, famine struck Bengal. In 1770, an estimated 10 million people died. The company continued to extract taxes and export grain, even as fields went barren and bodies piled up. This wasn't mismanagement. It was systemic cruelty. Profit over people. A company with an army. By the late 18th century, the company had morphed into a monster of its own making. It commanded a private army of over 260,000 soldiers, larger than the British Army itself. Most were Indian sepoys, trained in European warfare, but commanded by British officers. They fought not for ideology or loyalty, but for paychecks. And that made them dangerous in more ways than one. This wasn't colonization by a European crown. It was corporate colonization. The board of directors in London made decisions that governed the lives of tens of millions in Asia. Imagine a modern-day corporation like Google or ExxonMobil having its own standing army, its own currency, and diplomatic immunity. That's what the East India Company was, a sovereign corporation. Exploitation and divide and rule. To maintain its grip on India, the company perfected the art of divide and rule. It played religious, ethnic, and regional divisions to its advantage. Hindus against Muslims, Sikhs against Marathas, local rulers against one another. But it wasn't just political manipulation, it was economic devastation. India's once vibrant textile industry was deliberately destroyed. The company flooded Indian markets with cheap British-made cloth, driving local artisans to starvation. Towns that were once global centers of weaving and dyeing, like Dhaka and Murshidabad, turned into ghost towns. The company's tax system was brutal. Peasants were forced to grow cash crops, indigo, opium, tea, instead of food. When droughts came, famine followed, and the company simply looked the other way. Resistance and the Sepoy Mutiny. By the mid-19th century, resentment was boiling. In 1857, it erupted. The spark was small, greased rifle cartridges allegedly made from cow and pig fat, offensive to Hindu and Muslim soldiers. But it ignited a firestorm. Indian sepoys mutinied, civilians joined, and parts of northern India exploded into revolt. The company's response was swift and brutal. Mass hangings, villages razed, entire populations punished. The Indian Rebellion of 1857, also known as the Sepoy Mutiny or the First War of Independence, shattered the illusion that the company's rule was stable or just. The rebellion failed, but it marked the beginning of the end for the East India Company. The end of the company, the rise of the Raj. In 1858, the British government stepped in. The East India Company was dissolved. India became a direct colony of the British Crown. Queen Victoria was declared empress. The British Raj had begun, but the legacy of the company didn't disappear. It left behind a deeply scarred India, economically weakened, socially fragmented, and politically subjugated. The British Empire took over, but they inherited a system built by the company: exploitative taxation, centralized bureaucracy, and a population conditioned to serve imperial interests. Legacy: corporate colonialism in the modern world. Why does this story matter today? Because the British East India Company was not just a historical curiosity, it was the template for modern corporate power. It showed the world how a business, if large enough, ruthless enough, could become a government. Today, corporations don't send armies, but they influence elections, write legislation, and extract resources from the global south. From tech monopolies to oil giants, we see echoes of the company everywhere. Corporate colonization didn't die, it evolved. Echoes today. From boardrooms to battlegrounds, the East India Company may be gone, but its legacy haunts us. The unequal land systems, the communal divisions, the underdevelopment, they all trace back to company policies. India's poverty was not inevitable, it was engineered, and the company's methods live on in modern economic imperialism. Foreign firms that control water, land, data, and labor in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Western powers still backing stability at the cost of local self-determination. It's not a British problem, it's a global warning. Conclusion: the story of the British East India Company is a cautionary tale. It wasn't just a company, it was a conqueror, a tyrant, a master of exploitation disguised as trade. At Sands of History, we believe the past speaks, if we're willing to listen. The company's rise and fall should make us question who holds power today and how easily profit becomes tyranny. If this story resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to support us in bringing more of these stories to life, check out the financial support links in the description. Until next time, remember, history isn't behind us, it's all